I want to thank Lisa for bringing this to my attention that we should be doing this class or this panel. Basically what has happened, we've been killing it right now. And you guys are all been making a lot of money, right? All the agents right now, I can't even imagine what they're doing with their money, right? So the GCI, when you look at the trend report, we have a multi-year trend report that shows the increase of GCI for the whole office, for all the offices. And if you look at the trend with the MLS, we are killing it, okay? So the thing is, with Keller Williams, we teach you how to run a business, but we also teach you how to run your personal life, right? We help you with investing. We help you with a life by design, bottom line, right? So Lisa brought this to my attention about a month or two ago, and she's like, why don't we do this class, right? Well, actually, let's really clarify it. Maybe like a year ago, you've been asking me to get the Millionaire Investment class over to us, which we've been doing it, just not in our region. And so you'll see that on the classes coming ahead with, what's his name, the guy we love?
Gene Rivers.
Gene Rivers, yes. So if you have an opportunity to see this class, it's unbelievable. We actually saw it in person like 5 years ago, maybe. Yeah. It was a long time ago. It's amazing. Obviously, I think with myself, I think I need to take it like 6 times because it was so much good stuff, right? So I encourage you to watch anything that Gene Rivers does. He's an amazing instructor. Okay, so we're gonna start this off. I want you to introduce yourselves. Introduce how long you've been with KW and how long you've been investing as well, or working with investors. Frank, we'll start with you.
Overall, I've been with KW about 10 years now. And I've been investing since actually before I got my license in 2001.
Thank you. I'm going to pause for a moment. When I met Frank, he came into our Tracy office. He came in with flip-flops, ball cap on, shorts, and I'm like, am I supposed to be meeting his dad? You know, I had no idea. And I'm like, you are the #1 agent in San Joaquin County. And I was like, what are we doing here? And you're like, yeah, very easy going. And so I thank you for that. You made my life so smooth. So I appreciate it.
As you can see, I grew up. I wear shoes now.
I think my son has those shoes. So I'm just saying, right? Okay. So
I'm Selena Paniagua. I'm with Keller Williams in the Lodi office. Been with Keller a little bit over 5 years now.
I believe so. She opened up the Lodi office with me.
Yeah, 5 years ago. We started working probably with investors. My husband, my #1 client right now. I think 9 years now.
Wow, great. Thank you, Lisa.
I'm Lisa Aguilera. I started with KW, I think back in 2009, left and did my own thing for a little bit and been back for a year and a half and very happy to be back here. I started actually on Frank's team and learned a lot from Frank over the years. So I totally appreciate that. I think I invested my first property back in 2009 and then took a little vacation from it and been gearing up in the last 2 years, I'd say.
Yeah, thank you. Diego.
Diego Hera, been with Keller Williams, I don't know, 7 to 10 years. I'm another protege of Frank.
That gives me chills. That's awesome. Yeah.
Frank's like,
Making me feel old.
Frank's like, wait, do I really want to own those two?
Actually, I'm honored. So it feels good.
So we've been investing ever since I joined Frank's team 7-10 years ago.
You actually were like on the courthouse steps, right?
Yeah. We've done it together between me, Lisa, and Frank. We've done every single angle of investing in real estate.
Amazing. Can't wait to really dig in. All right, you guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day because I know what that's like. So thank you. All right. Excuse me. Yeah. Check to see if she's on there. We do have Nagi Manpreet. She thought this was going to be on Zoom. Nagi, if you want to, if you're there, she can introduce herself. But she will be on the mega agent panel over for mega camp over in Pleasanton. Okay, so she isn't on. I think there was a little bit confusion with that. So we'll go ahead and move forward. All right, Frank,
Hit me.
How did you start investing, my friend?
What actually got me to investing was purchasing my first house at a young age, right here in Tracy downtown. I owned it for about 11 months. I was young. And in that process, I bought it and sold it about a year later. And I, at a young age, made about $30,000. And I had bought it as a fixer-upper, fixed it up, lived in it. And at that point, I then got my license and then just started buying houses and everything else from then.
Wow.
So
How old were you?
well, I got my license in 2001. So I don't know, I was probably maybe 21, 22, because it was well before my license.
That's amazing.
22, 23.
Congratulations. I
Thank
say that because I'm trying to coach, I'm not trying. I am coaching my son to think about this because he's been working and living at home because of Zoom, right? For colleges. So, oh, there we go. Here we have Nagi. This is wonderful. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. We had to shift it out a little bit, huh?
Here, scoot over because we can't see Frank.
There we go. All right, we're going to pause for a moment. We're going to go ahead and introduce Nagi. Go ahead and explain how long you've been in real estate and how long you've been with KW.
In real estate since 2003, and with Keller Williams, couple of months, and learning a lot, connecting with a lot of people.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, who else would like to take that question? How did you start investing? Lena, go ahead.
Just started investing. My husband, he has a contracting background, and you know that's what we wanted to do. But we just started off with the MLS first. That's where we've always done it, and then from that, from the experience of, you know, because I'm a secretary too, seeing the expenses and everything. I've been also been able to help my clients when they're looking at a deal.
Got it. Thank you. We're going to dig in a little bit deeper about what you actually look at and what you look for the return rate. Okay. Lisa, how did you start?
So back prior to the crash,
09.
09, yeah.
We all know that
Faithful
number.
year.
Yeah.
I was investing in out-of-state properties because of the appreciation and the ability to purchase and flip it basically as soon as you sold. And I learned a lot about that it's not great to be a speculative investor because 2009 came and it was a nightmare. But more recently, as I worked through with investors through the years, I started seeing the money that they were making, and it really was getting through my own mindset of I'm scared. What if it doesn't work out? And really, it came down to just getting educated. And once I was educated, it took a lot of the fear out, and then started purchasing single family because it made sense to me and it was no longer speculative. So in it for the long run.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Diego.
I started really on Frank's team. I was under his wing for a little bit, and I was helping him at the courthouse steps. When the market tanked in 2009, we did pretty good.
Yeah, I bet you did. I bet you did. You want to take this one? It's a question of how did you start investing?
I started again, as Lisa said, in 2009. That was my first investment property I purchased. I fixed it and I flipped it. And that is one mistake I repent. I should have kept it. And I made a good chunk of profit, and I used that money to reinvest in my next project. So I made an X amount and I just divided that into 2 projects. And that's how I grew my portfolio. And after that, personally, I have not sold any of my projects. I just.
How many doors do you have right now?
I have 12. Most of them are in Bay Area.
In the Bay Area.
That's my area.
Yeah, nice. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You guys, real quick, if you have questions on, if you're out there on Zoom, you can actually put it in the chat. And we have people looking at the chat room right now. So I'll ask for questions at the end, but if you can't hear or something like that, please let us know. Okay. All right. So I'm an agent now. I've been an agent for probably a lot longer than any of you guys, so we won't say that, but let's just say I am an agent for 5 years and I really want to start doing this. What do you look for? help me get over my fear, because there's a lot of people who want to dabble in it and want to start flipping, but there's a scarcity, right? And they don't know what to look for. Who would like to answer first? Diego.
I'd say whoever, you be an agent or investor, you should focus on an area that you know well. Right, so if it's something where you've already sold 3 houses in that neighborhood, then you have a good idea what the value is, because that's the most important thing, is figuring out what the value of that place is. So start working with something with an area you know. So don't have your first investment be in Mississippi. Have it, if you live in Western Ranch, have it be in Western Ranch, or if you live in Salida, have it be in Salida. So that's a good
That's great
start.
advice. That's great advice.
Learn how to add value. And by adding that value, knowing what it's going to do to the end value of what you're purchasing. So
So when you say
no
add
different than
value,
any-
because a lot of people are probably saying add value, I can sell this. So add value, give me something more.
just adding value. If you purchase it for X amount, you're going to add value by doing bathrooms, kitchens, roofs, everything, knowing what that costs and what kind of return that gives you, and then what your end value is. So no differently than we've been taught as realtors our entire career, know your numbers.
Got it. Yeah, you're right. Know your numbers. So Selena, so when I hear this, 5 years into the business, I do not know where to go to have this person and this person and this person, nor would I want to manage all that, right? Because we all know gets a little hairy. You handle it a little bit differently because it's your husband who does that side of it. So can you share a little bit on that?
Well, I mean, we started just because he's always been in the construction business, and he had a large plumbing company, and then the company, the market crashed. So we lost our investment properties that we had. We basically lost everything. So we're more conservative when we started because we lost everything. So when we started again, it was with our own money because nobody would give us credit. So we used hard money, but we took a lot of steps. We could have probably duplicated and done it on a larger scale, but fear factor
Right.
doing it. So now that we've gotten to the point of, having a good cushion, now we're thinking more about keeping. So it used to be, because again, you said, we should have kept a lot. We should have kept a lot. But again, the fear, we could make money and having that cushion. And now we're like, well, you know what? It doesn't even make sense. We're always trying to chase the next deal. And I'm like, we have deals we have land that we could build, and why sell it? Why not just keep it? So now we're switching our train of thought.
So I think that's smart. Sometimes I get my own way, right? I sold a house right there on Wall Street just because it was emotional, right? But if I would have kept it, oh my gosh, right? So what I wish I would have done was talk with one of you guys, and you guys would have been able to talk me through it, and I would have kept it, and I would be sitting on this panel right now. But anyways, okay, you wanted to say something, Lisa?
Yeah, I think when you're getting started, I think it can be very overwhelming because there's so many ways to invest, right? So I think you really have to become an expert in what it is that you're chasing. Frank did the courthouse steps, he did the foreclosures, but he's also done a lot of flips. Do you want to get into something where you're rehabbing and then you're keeping it, which is a BRRRR method? You can look that up. Or do you just want to get into strictly flips, or do you want to get into buy and holds? There's so many different ways to invest, and so it can be really overwhelming. So I think it's really important, just like when we're doing our regular real estate deals, it's like find your niche and just become the expert in it, because that's where some of the fear will go away and you're not feeling so overwhelmed. So you have to pick
That's
which
a
one
good
invest in.
point. Because the buy and hold, that's renters you're dealing with, right? And going in and out, they might be there for 6 months, or they might be there for 10 years. Have you guys ever experienced that where it's like, okay, you got it rented? Well, I know Frank does, so you could chat on that. So that must be intense too and stressful.
On a hold?
Yes.
Yeah, so I look at my holds the same as I do my flips. However, I really don't hold single family homes. I only hold apartments. The returns are better.
So speak a little louder. Did you guys hear that? That was key.
Yeah, so I don't hold my single families. I hold multi-units, and they're still always value add properties, meaning what can I add to the value of the property? Not that I'm looking to necessarily increase the value of the property, but by increasing the value of the property, you also increase the rents of the property because of what you have to offer them as tenants. So.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, so when we say adding value, what Frank is doing, that is one way of adding value. It's like rehabbing the property, which is very good. And the way I add value, as I said, in Bay Area, the reason we all have our own areas where we specialize. There are so many cities which allow you to build additional units with easy permits over the counter. You make that, the cost of making those units is not much. Legally, you can put in a 10,000 square foot lot, you can put 3 to 4 tenants in the separate units. So as he said, it's a multi-units which he holds, that single family can actually become a multi-unit, depending on how you figure it out. And your rents on those, you're getting the loans for single family on those. Your mortgages, your rates are as of single family, but your rents being generated out of those are up to $10,000.
Wow.
So we are talking about a positive cash flow of anywhere between $5,000 to $8,000, not $5,000 to $6,000 after paying your mortgage. Even if one tenant leaves, there are still 2 or 3 units occupied, so you'll never go. So that's why, as everybody is repeatedly saying, focus on the area you know, and you have to know the number and you have to know what you're doing.
Thank you. Selena, it looks like you wanted to say something, or you?
No,
good with
no,
that?
I agree
Okay.
with that. It's like knowing your area because, I mean, I know a specific area left and right, but you can just switch another part of the city and I don't.
Right, right. Okay, so when do you flip and when do you hold? What do you look at? What is your return that you're looking at, or what are you looking for?
So my holds, I mean, my math is very simple. I hold pretty much anything that produces $1,000 in rental income per 100,000 spent, which I know may sound like, where the heck do you find that? And it's not easy, but rather it's at time of purchase or, you know, the end goal after rehab and, you know, flushing through tenants over a 5-year period of time. That's pretty much what I look for
Got
on
it.
my hold.
Got it.
My flips, again, my flips is what's led me to my holds. So, you know, I look at it as one can only spend so much money that you make in working, and none of us want to work forever. So at some point you're going to stop working because you don't need the money to live off of. So you have to diversify where you're going to take your flip money into your long-term hold, so you no longer have to work. And that's just what I've done over the years to accumulate the doors that I have.
Anybody else want to take that question on? When do you hold and when do you flip?
I think it just depends on running the numbers in the beginning and see what you want your end result to be. If you're just looking to make some money and then get out and go do something else with that money, and that's a flip. But if you're looking for that long term, like Frank was talking about, like is your end game to own a certain number of doors so that you can retire and not have to work because you have the passive income. I think it just really depends on what your strategy is going in.
Awesome, thank you.
And it's okay, like to change. It could be one thing at the beginning and you get it to a certain point and then it could be another. I mean, that's how you basically learn. Again, for us, it was that we just wanted that quick, oh my God, 50, 60,000. Then at one point, it's not like, wow, extra money, but that cash in the bank's not doing anything. It's not bringing any passive income. So then I'm like, okay, you got to switch it. That's when we switched it.
So what, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I've had investors that they're kind of different. They held residential property because of the appreciation. And originally they were making not quite $1,000, but they were making $1,500 on $250,000 property. Well, it started not to make sense for them when that property, specifically Stockton, went up to $450, and they're like, well, I'm only making $1,500 on this $450 property.
Right.
That was a good point for them to turn that into a triplex. All right, so I've upgraded people that originally started residential, market went up, and then we moved that money to a duplex or a triplex.
Wow, that's
Right.
interesting. I like that.
So if it's a residential, yeah, you'll get a higher appreciation, but less return. But then you could roll that return into a multifamily property.
Talking about investors, what do you look for when you're talking with them? How do you say, you know, okay, I want to work with you? Because there's a lot of people out there who want to play that role, who really probably shouldn't be. And so what do you look for? What questions do you ask them?
Honestly, you want to work with people who've done it before. Right? So they've already owned a couple of rentals. This is not every single dime that they have, so they're gonna call you 24/7. You want someone that already owns quite a few rentals, they've flipped properties before. That's kind of an ideal client. So you could send them a deal and they know what to do with it.
I think a lot like first-time home buyers, it's a lot of education. And you need to be able to walk them through the process to figure out what is their goal. So they say, I want to invest in real estate. Okay, well, what does that really mean to you? Do you want to flip it? Do you want to hold it? How much money do you have to work with? How much risk are you willing to take? I mean, I think there's a whole process that you need to go through to make sure that at the end of the day, they really know what they're getting themselves into, just like a first-time home buyer.
Right.
Sometimes you need to hold their hands, and sometimes you get someone who just knows that they're like, find me a deal. This is exactly what I want.
Got it. Thank you. Anybody else?
It's just, you know, your clients should know what they are doing. For an investor, it's difficult to work with a first-time investor versus if you are doing a lot of business, you will always get option of working with investors who have been repeatedly investing. It's so easy. You take a deal, go to them. They know the numbers. You don't have to educate. So they either accept or reject and you move on to second. And those are the kind of people you want to work with, who know the numbers and market.
But there's always going to be those first time investors, right? So it is about educating, because you're not going to pass that to somebody. You know what I mean? You're gonna take it and.
Well, you also have to value your time because a lot of these
Right.
investors are just calling you to, you know, take your time, and they have that attitude that they're an investor, they're cash, they know it all. And at that point, it's like, you're at the bottom of my list.
Right. What questions do you ask them?
Well, and you just get the feel when you're speaking to them, they're like, well, I'm just calling the listing agent, so why am I going to be chasing him or
Right.
him or he or
Right.
she if they're just calling the listing agent? Or they're like, well, if you have an investor, or I'm only going to take this, and you can have a conversation if you're going to feel that it's very going to be your personalities are not going to align. Then, you know, you still have them on your list. If a property comes and, you know, they're probably on the bottom of your list, but build up a buyer's list for when you have that opportunity, you start calling. And then there's an investor that will really value, you'll have a really great relationship and you know that you're going to be the go-to. Now on that investor, yes, I'm going to take a little bit more time. If they send me a property, I'll take that extra 20, 30 minutes to, you know, give them the comps or more information. But somebody that's just calling, I'm not going to waste my time.
Yeah, we'll get people to say, any deals you have over 20%, please send to me.
I will buy
You're
it.
like, no, I'm taking it.
Yeah. They're gonna be the last on my list to get that, but they literally will, I get text blasts from people, I get emails, calls, hey, I'm an investor, bring me in the ad at this percent, you know, I say, well, first question, what type of return are you looking for? Well, at least 20%. Well, I'm gonna work with people that I've done business before I even, you know,
Right.
they're way down on the list.
Right. Right.
It's also a two-way street of trust.
But
Yeah.
there are always different type of investors when we are working with our buyers as investors. One are conservative investors. They go by the book and they want safe, secure rent. So those are the people you educate and they will go pick the decent neighborhoods, no problems with tenants. So that is one kind of investors. And then other investors are good, bring me any deal, any city. So those are different investors. You just categorize them and accordingly take the deal to them.
Got it. Got it.
I want to add something because I see this a ton in the Bay Area and it's starting to creep over here is we have people that they label themselves investor. Really, the whole goal is just to get into contract and then they try to sell that contract.
Wow.
So we call them bird dogs. I guess that's the term for it.
Wholesaler.
A wholesaler, right? They don't have any money, right? They went to a seminar, like a weekend seminar, and their whole goal is just to, and I see a lot of agents, well, hey, we already have a buyer. And then, I don't know, a minute later, that same person that got in the contract is calling Frank up and myself saying, hey, we have this property. And if they don't close, they don't care. And they wasted the seller's time, the agent's time. So.
I didn't even know that was out there.
That is a
Wow.
whole ugly
Yeah.
thing going on. I just closed one of those and it was a nightmare, probably the worst transaction I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, because they know the contract, they know, well, you have to give me a notice. Like, I see a lot of agents fall into that trap. So that's one thing we want Keller Williams to be aware of, is if they say, well, hey, I have an inspection. The funniest thing is, hey, we need a inspection, and then they bring all their buyers throughout that time to look at that
Oh my
property.
gosh.
That's a
So-
whole nother class.
Yeah. Oh my
But,
gosh.
yeah, if an investor doesn't show you proof of funds, right, they say they're ask for the proof of funds. If their proof of funds really isn't there, they're really not buyers.
Great. I appreciate you sharing that story. Since we kind of went down that road, talk about the worst transaction you went through with an investor.
Sometimes wondering, why did they even want to work with us as an agent? Because they just want to run the show, because they think because they own the property, or they think because they have all the money that they're gonna run the whole transaction and know all the right things to do as the investor. And that's probably the worst situation in working with some investors.
Yes, yes.
And that's when you just gotta
You gotta show 'em the
determine if your
door.
time is worth the effort you have to put into it,
I always
because
say, show them the door.
they can
Yeah.
be, they can be bloodsuckers.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. Nagi. Worst transaction, worst.
Not with investors. I'm very picky.
Mhm.
When I don't
Or the
work-
biggest mistake that you made.
I sold my first fixer and I bought it at 190K and it's worth 700 plus K today. And I'm talking about 7 or 8 years back.
Wow.
You're like, is that what you're- It's, again, and some investors, their expectations, they give you a list, and then you're, the same thing Frank just said, then why did you hire us? And then they take all your time and your peace of mind, and they want a quick, but they want super, high price, but they talk about all these upgrades they do to their home, and you're like, this piece of crap, and they're talking, and it's gotten to the point that I'm like, no, I don't need this. And, just let it go. Because sometimes you want it so bad, you want that commission
Right,
check,
right.
and you're willing, and you're bending over backwards for this, investor or client, and it's not not worth it.
Thank you for sharing. Lisa, your worst transaction with investors or just your worst deal with them. You know what I mean?
Well, it's one I just closed, and we went into contract. The buyer was a real estate broker, showed proof of funds, and then wanted the loan assumed. The transaction assumed, and it ended up, the seller's probably gonna sue the buyer.
Oh my God.
It's a nightmare. I don't even want to go into it. I'd be here for an hour, but it's just, you can see, you can get a deal and it looks good all on paper, and then it can just go south. But I would say as a personal investor, the first thing we bought was a fourplex in Fresno before the crash, and I wish I would have held on to that, sold it so I could quit my job, and I wish I still had it now. And then, just like I mentioned earlier, speculative investing, I've learned the hard way that you really got to know what you're doing, and you got to know your numbers, and it has to make sense. Don't try to put an investment that you think you just really want for whatever reason into this box when it doesn't fit. It's just really know your numbers and know what your end goal is so that you get the results that you want. And you want to have a plan B with your investments too. If you're buying something and wanting to hold it short term, make sure that you can hold it long term if you need to. So I think it's just education, education, education. And a little tip for you guys, I've learned so much from 2 websites. One is biggerpockets.com. They even have calculators on there where you can run numbers for different properties, and then one rental at a time. Every day, while I'm getting ready, I listen to a podcast, and those are the 2 that usually just seem to be my go-tos.
I love that. Thank you so much.
And
Biggest
Bigger Pockets
mistake.
out of Brentwood, right?
Are they?
Yeah, Brian Green's out of,
Oh, I knew
Brentwood.
Oh,
they
yeah.
were
We're with,
local, but
yeah, Keller Williams. Yeah.
amazing.
yeah.
David
So
David.
David Green.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say my worst personal experience.
Uh-huh. Talk a little louder.
Back in 2003 or 4, I had purchased fourplexes down in Taft, California, and the numbers looked beautiful on paper. But don't ever rely on a property management company, because between repairs, manipulation of rents, and all of that, you can really be taken for a loop. So I think it's really important to, as they were saying, own where you can drive by and see and manage your own property versus expecting a company to handle it for you, because no one's going to manage your money like you are. No different. And your money is your property. So, you know, if you're not comfortable having someone pay your bills and deposit your checks and work with your cash, then don't feel necessarily comfortable enough to hand your life investment over to someone else, because that's essentially what you're doing.
I actually
Thank you.
disagree with that a little bit. I mean, I would love to own more in California and close by, but we all know what prices are like, right? So there are great investment opportunities all across our nation, but do your homework. Don't just invest because you heard that, like right now I'm looking in Tennessee. Don't just invest because you heard it's the greatest, hottest market ever and you put your money in and you're trusting, like you said, a property manager. You got to do your homework. You got to talk to a lot of people. Need to make sure you have a team there before you even do the investment. Make sure you do have a property manager that you can trust, who has a great track record, who understands investment properties. You need to have someone you can count on for handyman services. Make sure you have great lenders. So I do think that there's opportunity outside of our immediate area, but I right now I'm totally doing my due diligence, and I will go, once I decide on an area, I will fly out there and look at it myself. I'm not going to buy sight unseen, because I've done that before and it bit me in the, you know what.
Yeah.
And I will agree with that as well, for single family homes, because those are very easily managed. Because my experience is primarily in apartments. They're a lot more difficult to manage. The repairs, the complaints, you know, tenants coming and going. So there's a lot more involved with it. Single families, yes, I do believe that. I agree. That's definitely, you know, that's not really an issue. It's really if you're looking to do apartments, you know,
So
out of the area.
thank you. When we were at the regional meeting last week, there was a couple of the owners of a market center who's actually looking at North Carolina, because their son has like done so much research that is the place. So yeah, I think they have like 15 doors they just closed on. It was crazy. I'm like, oh my gosh. And they're like, yeah, we visit all the time now. Well, the son visits all the
Yeah.
time. It goes back and forth. I couldn't even imagine. That's like something that's so intangible in my head right now. So anyways, okay, you guys. Okay, before we hit those questions, I want to know is there anything that I didn't ask you that you should be sharing with the agents? Something that's kind of like, you know, in your, go ahead,
Yeah.
please.
So while we are investing into real estate, money plays a role. So a lot of new agents who have not been investors before, so they are thinking, okay, I'm ready to invest, but how do I get my resources together? Maybe their 50,000 is a down payment, or 100,000 or X amount, or maybe you have 100,000 in your pocket, and there is a beautiful property which is coming in market for 600, needs a lot of work. I have, but I don't know how I can put everything together. I want them to know there are a lot of private money lenders out there. So even if they are charging you 10 to 12%, look at the bigger picture. You're borrowing that 50,000 from them only for 6 months. You're using that money to rehab your project. When you sell it, look at those numbers and take that into as your cost of completing the project. And that is one thing. If you're going to hold it, then go with a good lender. And my plan is always holding it long term. So I check the lowest rate, 30 years hold, and how much rent I'm going to get out of it. Am I negative or am I positive or am I at break even? So consider those numbers and then you decide where you want to buy and how much you want to spend. But there is private fundings. Companies give you in 5 days whatever money you want, as long as there is enough equity in the project you're going to buy.
Interesting. Thank you so much. Anybody else?
Just one train of thought, working with investors, not your personal investments, they will always ask you, is this a good deal? I always say, my job is to basically tell me what you're gonna do to the property. I'll tell you, if you tell me you're gonna add square footage, or you're just gonna remodel bathrooms, kitchens, and I'll be like, I think you could sell it for this much. I'm not gonna tell them how much money they're gonna make, because I don't know how much they're gonna spend. That's their job. Their job is to run the numbers, run their construction costs, not mine, because I don't, I'm never gonna guarantee.
Right. I was like, that's really important
Oh,
too.
yeah.
That's like a whole other chapter that can open up if you tell them, oh yeah, you'll be able to make X, Y, and Z.
Especially
gotta
right
be really
now,
careful.
some investors are good with, 10, 20,000. Other investors want 60. It's like, you run your numbers and I'll let you know what I believe you're gonna be able to sell that, and you run your numbers. If it makes sense for you, great. I'm not gonna guarantee, you're gonna make X, Y amount at the end of the deal.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else? What's the one thing that you want to?
I love what Kanagi said about that there's money, private money out there. Don't let your drunk monkey tell you you have to have money to start investing. There's so many opportunities out there. You just have to get yourself educated and start looking. You can partner with someone. I've done that before when I had a great deal but didn't have the cash to put into it all myself. There's private money lenders. I was getting turned down by my regular lender to purchase. I went to a credit union. Don't let the idea that you have to have a bunch of money to go do an investment. Just get out of your head, educate yourself, and the opportunities will present themselves.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Anybody else? You guys want to share anything?
I want to give an example so that people can understand what we are talking.
Please.
And I have done it personally. So you buy any rundown property, let's say, I'm just using a number, 500,000, and you borrow 100,000 on top of it. So the cost of that fixer-upper to fix and do everything is around 600,000. By the time it is ready, you have to make sure if it is ready in nice condition, it sells for 650, 700, 800. Those are the numbers you want to look at. So take that step and initiate the transaction, but make sure the house which you're buying, if you're adding value to it by spending that money, it will sell more than your cost, whatever you have. And you're making good, decent profit, not like small profit in that.
Don't get discouraged either. I was talking to someone the other day who I analyzed this deal and it didn't work, and I analyzed this deal and it didn't work. And it's like, it's okay, because you might have to analyze 100 deals before it works. Don't just take one because you're so anxious to get into the game. Make sure your numbers are right. And like I said, on Bigger Pockets, they have a calculator there that will walk you through exactly what your numbers are. And there's probably some numbers you're not even thinking of as far as what it costs to purchase a property or flip a property.
That's great. I need to make sure I write that down. I want to look at that. You guys, there's a couple offices right now that Patrick and I was looking at, and they actually have an investment group, right? So it's another added value for Keller Williams. Like everybody, who wants to be an investment group, you give $10,000 to $20,000 to put it in the pot. And then, as a group, you guys figure out, what to invest in and so forth. I'm just throwing that out there. I think that'd be kind of cool. And it's another added value with Keller Williams. Obviously, there's a lot of high Ds in this room, so that would be tricky. But there's also a lot of high Ds with a lot of information and a lot of knowledge. So that's just something I'm throwing out there. I think it would be fun, especially since what could be coming down the pike, 6 months to a year from now. It's going to be the opportunity, I believe. So yeah, now's the time to start thinking about it. Go ahead. We have a question on Zoom.
Question from Zoom from Ashley Burgess. She says, when a buyer is going to wholesale, do they have to have their names and assignees on the name for the contract? Seems like seller would need to agree to a transfer of buyer names for them to do so.
There's a separate addendum that CAR put out that issues, that deals with that issue. Exactly. It's a buyer assignment form. And
Go ahead. No.
And you have to state if you're making any money from that transfer or not in that form. So that's the correct way to do it.
And not all title companies will do assigned contracts.
So unfortunately, when they initially get you under contract, they don't have to tell you that there is an assignee involved. There is the assignment form. And after researching it at length, the seller cannot decline as long as they're offering the same terms. So it's
Yeah.
crazy.
It doesn't sound like it's gonna be fun.
Even it- No, they are obligated to sign that form as long as the new buyer is adhering to the original terms of the contract, meaning all the contingency removals, the close date, the type of financing, everything.
They don't have to disclose it's a signing at the
On-
beginning.
Not at the very beginning.
Oh.
Okay, so say this again, since even our panelists are like questioning it, so we're not questioning or learning something.
Yeah.
So ask that question again, so they can hear that, because I want to make
Lisa
sure.
mentioned it, because I always was under the impression that when you're offered, you could say, you know, Selena Bonell was offering, or assignee, right? And you're saying you don't even have to put that verbiage.
That, I think, is already in the contract. Is it? I think it is. But in order to assign it and for the seller to agree, it has to be the same original terms.
Got it.
Well, most of the time, what I've seen is the person that's trying to get the contract, they don't have any money to actually prove.
Mine did, unfortunately.
Yeah, but 90% of the time I've seen it, they have no money.
I think it's like anything, is get verification of funds. If they're giving you a pre-approval, call the lender and just screen the heck out of them. There's not enough question. If you know your property that you're listing is potentially going to be someone's investment or a flip for an investor, you just need to screen the heck out of them. Ask a million questions, and get it all in writing. Call the lender, verify the funds, everything.
That's great information, you guys. Thank you so much. Is there any other questions there?
One question was, what was the second site for that, Lisa, you mentioned, you said bigger pockets and then another one,
One rental at a time.
one rental at a time.
Okay, any other questions from Zoom?
Nothing.
Anything here in the room? Oscar, please.
So what techniques, strategies have been most successful for you guys for identifying opportunities?
Good question. What techniques or what techniques do they use to identify the opportunities for a purchase?
Knowing your numbers. You know, if something pops up on MLS today, or you get presented a property today for 300,000 in a certain neighborhood, and you're like, gosh, that seems pretty low. We'll know what the resale is. Or if you get presented a investment property to hold, know what they're asking for the property and the rents. But even more importantly than the rents and the purchase price is you need to confirm and understand all the expenses. If you're paying water, if you're paying garbage, if you're paying PG&E, if it's 5 units and it has 1 electric meter and 1 gas meter, well, guess what? You're paying all the gas and the electric. The tenants are not. So there's a lot involved, and it's like anything. Know your numbers. Know what the expenses are.
Yeah, like cities like Oakland, right? There's a sidewalk ordinance. You have to pay for the sidewalk, right? A lot of times you're stuck with that as a buyer, and the sewer lateral as well. We're not talking cheap amount. It could be an extra $20,000 in cost.
Wow.
If you didn't know, and it's the next city over doesn't require that, but Oakland does. So definitely know your costs. I want to add another site that I think is really good. This site called Rentometer.
Rentometer.
Yeah, Rentometer. It's like the Zillow of market rents. It's a subscription site. I think the first couple times allows you to do it for free, but it's fantastic. Especially if you're working with clients, they always will ask this question, how much is rent? It says, I'm not a property manager, right? But I've heard this site, Rentometer, go check that out.
There you go. Yeah,
And that's what they do.
that's awesome.
Questions, I think that these are the questions that I wanted to know before I started investing. One, I hear the first property is the most difficult to get, so maybe if you really want to comment on that. And the other is what your spread would be. So how much would it be worth it when you do your numbers and you're gonna flip? What numbers are you generally looking at? 20,000, 50,000, what is it worth it to you?
It's up to the investor. So like my investors usually get hard money loans, and then I have some cash investors. The hard money loan guys need a much bigger spread to make it work because they're paying a lot of other costs. Someone like Frank, when he buys, he's generally buying cash. Sometimes he might leverage, but he doesn't need to do as much of a spread. And then, I mean, it really depends. I've seen guys at auctions as long as they're making 10 grand, they were happy because they wanted that particular high-end area, which I think is insane.
Some people are willing to, you know, the spreads smaller just to say they're investing. And that's also thing, you know, some investors just to say they have multiple units, whether their spread is 5, 10,000, and other, you know, investors are like, I'd rather take it slow and have a bigger margin. I'm only going to look at deals if I'm making 50, 60,000. So every investor is different.
Got it. Did you have a second question, Janet?
Just, I know for the first one was the most scary for me back, you know, years ago, but that was the hardest thing. So for a new person, I think it's that first one, maybe you could give some advice on that.
First one.
Education.
Yeah, so same thing is whatever area you feel like you're an expert in, that's the area that I would suggest being your first investment at. Don't big.
And hold on to it. Hold on. That's what I heard from all you guys. Hold on to it.
As an agent,
Before you
we
guys
get
take
a lot
on
of opportunities. As a real estate agent, we get a lot of opportunity to buy things and we become nervous. Oh my gosh, if I buy it for myself, what if it goes other ways around? I'll say just make sure that for next 10 years or 5 years, you can hold. You're not paying that rent out of your pocket and you can hold on to it. 5 to 8 years, things change always. And give yourself a little bit cushion when you're buying in the market. Don't overpay. But as a real estate agent, we get so many options where we can buy things off market.
Wonderful. Thank you. Oscar, you had one more question?
I guess besides the MLS, any other technique that you guys have used to find these deals besides them that are that by
Yes.
somebody calling you?
Connections. For all my real estate transactions, I have connected with people and agents like all of us in different cities. And there are so many agents who don't care, they just want to sell or they are retired and they are okay. They have people who are selling and they prefer to sell off market. Connect. So you will hear me all the time when I meet you. You have any off market listing, please bring it to me. That's how I have developed all my connections and that is how I bought all my fixer-uppers off market.
So similar for me, I mean, even though I'm licensed, I'm primarily these days a cash buying investor, and I make great relationships over my years of also being a realtor that now many real estate agents bring me deals. They know I'm not going to be representing myself. The agent who brought it to me, they can double end it, even if they don't have the listing and they just found it, they can contact me. Hey, Frank, I found a property that's listed on the market. They represent me. So, you know, it's going back to relationships.
That's the only way to find good deals. Let other agents get business from you and you'll become their favorite clients.
That's really good.
It's a lot cheaper than putting in an ad on TV.
Yes.
I think
It's a great suggestion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think there's opportunity right now because we are coming out of the pandemic. We're coming out of the moratorium on people being evicted. And there's a lot of investors who are tired of being landlords. So I think if you go after some of those out of town investors or just people who don't want to be landlords anymore, because California is not friendly at all. There are some states that are friendly to landlords, but California is not. I think right now that's going to be the best opportunity to find properties where someone just wants to be done with it and they're willing to take a deal rather than go on market because they don't want to deal with the tenant.
Don't count your chickens too early. Evictions will probably go into 20 or into 22.
You're probably right.
So when I actually saw a transaction came through, and I'm not going to say who or what town, but the first transaction went south. The seller was an investor, okay, and so it went south. It didn't close, and last minute, right? And the buyer agent just was not fun to deal with, right? So lo and behold, the seller is exhausted over it, literally exhausted. And somebody just says, well then, will you take this? And they took it. So don't assume anything, you know, always ask that question, right? Because you never know what they will, you know, what they'll take. So that was like an aha moment for me because I was even considering it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But yeah, so obviously you want to respect the agent you're working with them. You know, you don't want to lowball, but just have a conversation. You never know what can happen.
You brought up something is, I've seen this happen so many times where a house or something sits and it's at 350,000. Investor comes in, writes at like 260, some gets accepted. All right, so don't assume that especially if something's been sitting for like 2 months or more in this market, you could write a lower offer.
I like that. I
And
like
don't
that.
get disappointed when your offer doesn't get accepted. It's like, that was my number that worked, next.
Yeah, next. You guys, is there any other questions before we close this up? I hope this was powerful for everybody. We are going to attempt to keep doing this in person. Obviously, with the way the world's going, this might change a little bit for a short term. But I do want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
One
Thank
more
you.
quick
Oh,
little
yes,
tip.
please.
So you all probably have heard of the Millionaire Real Estate Investor book.
Yes.
There is a hold book. It's the yellow one. And that is an excellent book, just like the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Breaks it down so simple. When we saw Gene Rivers, I actually saw him, he did a hold seminar, and he just talked about you buy your first one and how he has, I don't even know how many doors now,
Right.
600 or something like that, but it started out with just that one. So that whole book is really good.
And you can find that on kellerinc.com. So take a look at that. Go ahead.
Obviously, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh, yes. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You guys, Crystal was the winner of this little contest I did on Facebook. So you guys be watching our Facebook group. That's the 4 quadrants. You want to make sure you look at that video about the 4 quadrants with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Anything else?
I would just say also podcast, real estate investment podcast, you know, listen, it's going to take a while for you to pull the trigger, but at least get educated and see what they're saying.
One thing I think is good to know, if any of the new realtors, or if you find a deal and you are nervous yourself to invest, maybe partner up with a senior person who has been doing this. Maybe go to anyone who you trust and you know, hey, I have this off-market deal, but I want to partner in with this, but this is the only money I have. How can we work it together? Rather you let it go, work with the person who has been doing this and make it for yourself.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
What
All
was
right.
the whole book?
It's, yeah, hold. It's the yellow one. It's on Keller Inc.
That's it, you guys. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Bye, Frank. Everybody wants to go leave. Yeah.